I wanted to talk about testing your forms once you've created them and have them working in Acrobat. And one of the ways you should test every PDF form you create is directly within Adobe Reader. I know these are working in Acrobat. What I want to do is go out and test them in Reader. And if you check your Reader version, mine is 11.0.5. You can see this is Reader 11 and I have Acrobat 11. So the two are very compatible. But it is possible once in a while, especially if it's very old versions, for your JavaScript not to work in Reader. Part of that is because older versions of Acrobat, you always had to enable the form for Reader users. So you could create a form that works great in Acrobat and you move it into Reader and it doesn't work at all. So every form you create, you want to test. So I'll test the message box. You can see I do get a message box just fine. Whether I click yes or no doesn't matter because there's no coding yet on either of these buttons. But the message box works fine. I'll take a look at the response box and what is my favorite color? It's prompting me. I'll plug in pink, click OK, and you can see it pops up an alert with that information. So I know this form is working correctly, at least at this point with what I have coded. I'm going to go over to a couple of others with a bit more JavaScript on them, and I'll do the setting field visibility first. Now notice on this form, it says you can save data. So that's my indication that as an Adobe Reader user, this form is able to be worked with. Now, if it had signatures in it, it probably wouldn't be, unless it's enabled in Acrobat. But let's test the JavaScript in this form. So I'm going to put my cursor in the name form field, not add anything. Now, if I tab over into the phone field, nothing happens. If I tab back and type something in, and I'll plug in my name, when I tab or click out of this field, something should happen. And you can see that works just fine. I have this set up so that if there's any content added to the name field, these fields will pop up on the form. If there's nothing added, so if I delete it and tab out, those are hidden. So that one's working just fine as well. Let me go over to the Show Field checkbox and check out this form. There's only a name field in this one, and you can see it doesn't turn yellow. I didn't change the highlight color of this one. But what's supposed to happen is if I click this checkbox, there should be some form fields that appear on the form. So I'll click it and they appear. I'll click it again and they don't. Now, it looks like now that I'm testing this in Reader, like there is a type of typo within this area. So this is one I would definitely want to go back to Acrobat and double check. So while you're testing this in Reader, it's also a good idea to look over the complete form and just make sure that there aren't any other changes you may want to do. So I want to go back and use the Show Field checkbox and correct this misspelling within this area. But the checkbox itself is working just fine. So my JavaScript and scripting works in Adobe Reader. So just keep that in mind for every form you create in Acrobat, whether it has JavaScript or not. Always go out and open it in Reader. Make sure that you are fully testing that form and all of its functionality, including the JavaScript, within Reader to make sure that that form will work for those users using Adobe Reader. I tend to find most forms, a high percentage of the users are using Adobe Reader, so you need to make sure to actually fully test it in that same program before the form goes out to your users. But that's testing a form within Adobe Reader and some additional considerations you want to remember when creating your forms and using JavaScript in Acrobat.